Hi and welcome back to another Alpha Challenge video. In this video I'll be breaking down a new deck archetype, Lich Death Knight. The deck uses 8 hands from beyond to be also able to out-control your opponent too. It can also be quite useful in the mirror match, which you will see in a future part of this video, but it allows you, if they use their hero, to the Headless Horseman, and it shuffles their head into this deck, you can use that, and in general, if your opponent has more than 8 cards, they won't be able to access the buffed hero power that comes from the Headless Horseman, which ultimately can make you outvalue your opponent. The other parts of this deck allows you, there's a lot of AoE aspects in this deck. So it has Corpse Explosion, it has the Ceaseless Expanse, it has Ursoc. All of these cards allow you to clear your opponent's board while also allowing you to set up your own board too. In addition, you also have the leeches. So the leeches allow you to steal 1 health from the lowest enemy. And when you use that, you're able to get your hero health total up to exceptional amounts. And in matchups that involve armor as well, if you're taking health away from the enemy hero, they're not actually able to use their armor for any specific purpose. So if you are having a lot of trouble against decks such as Demon Hunter, you could use this deck to be able to quite easily counter it, because you'll see in the rest of this game that I do play, they have a lot of armor. They end up with like 100 and something armor. But since I'm stealing their health and I'm not even worrying about their armor really, it allows me to win. The cards you want to mulligan for in this deck is Morbid Swarm, Creature of Madness, sometimes the Dreadhand Houndler if you need to do some trading, Nightmare of Lord Zavarus, and you could also, if you wanted to, keep Infested Breath and Sanguine Infestation. And in addition to what I talked about just before, you also do have a late game condition with Kil'jaeden. So if you are starting to run low on cards in your deck, you can use Kil'jaeden to be able to get you the infinite amounts of cards allowed. So you won't end up obviously decking out and fatiguing. So you do have that, an end game situation for you as well. So going into the gameplay that you see here, I am playing against a Death Knight. A Demon Hunter. I have currently been applying quite a bit of pressure to them, so they are obviously losing health coming from my leeches that I have. I have used a lot of the husks already, so that I am starting to get to a point where my amount of damage that I can deal with them is starting to get a little bit low. They do end up summoning out their Ravenous onto the board, and I get my Baron here as well, so I use the Infested Breath just to be able to go face. It gets a little bit of their health lower as well, so I am applying quite a lot of pressure into them too. I don't really want them to obviously have that 5-3 on the board, because you can't, because the leech will control it, but I do end up getting them down to 6 health at the moment, which is quite important. They are going to obviously be able to trade into my board as well, so I'm applying as much pressure as I can using this sort of board presence that I have. And I believe I play down the Headless Horseman here to be able to use my hero power onto them. But I end up opting for the Dark Gift, because I guess I don't really want them to also have have the other 5-3s coming onto the board just yet. I can always use the hero power. I used the Airlock Breach just to be able to trade in, because once again I do have the endgame sort of thing, and I get an Infestation, which will be quite good for me. So since they're down to 6 health at the moment, it is starting to get a point where they are in a little bit of a problematic situation. I think I was playing around Ziliax that turn. That's the reason why I put the 5 manas down onto the board, because it would obviously be able to clear, it would have got them down to 3 health, but if they did have a Ziliax, they would be able to heal a lot of that health back up anyway. They end up getting a wide board using their minions that they have. So they have all the the spaceships and things like that, the starship pieces, and they also got the Ravenous Hydras down. So I currently am using Corpse Explosion just to be able to clear the board of theirs, and then I play down the leeches. A misplay that I'm certain my opponent played in this sort of situation was that they aren't activating their starship, So next turn they don't end up opting for their starship to be activated, even though it should be, like, it's pretty much a priority to get that onto the board and get it started to be set up. They end up using the Dreadsteed, they get a Warp Drive going so they can draw some extra cards. I guess since I do have the leeches, like, it does mean obviously that I am not able to get as much down. Like, it's a possibility that I don't end up getting the 4 damage that's here as well, but it just feels incorrect to be trying to do that. They use the Tusk Piercer so then they can trade into me. I end up drawing my Ysera, which is fine. Like, I'm not really in too much of a situation, so I just play down the Ziliax to be able to trade into the starships, so it brings them down to 2 health, which means that there's next turn with the leeches, which means that they are going to get to a point where I'm going to be able to take those last bits of health that they have there, because if they use the starship now, which they do end up launching, it's not going to be able to apply enough pressure towards me. Like, it will take out my Ziliaxes, but I will be able to use the leeches to be able to take out the opponent if they don't end up clearing my 2 leeches that are here. They end up using their Demon Claws, they hit with their Tusk into my leech, and then I still have 1 leech alive at the moment. They use the Cubicle onto their starship, so it obviously gets them a lot more armor back up, but then I just do end up playing down the other leech card that I have. Oh, I think it looks like I didn't notice it first, but either way, I play the leech card down, I hit into them, and then I just pass. Or I play down the Tark Reef, it doesn't really matter too much. And I just pass, and then the leeches end up taking the last 2 bits of health from the opponent that's there. So, like, in general, you're not really too concerned about their armor with this deck. You can obviously just steal health coming from it too. Going into this matchup, I am playing against another Death Knight, so it's important that you're applying a lot of pressure towards them. If you get the leeches out and you're able to keep the board using them, you're obviously in a significantly stronger position than if you don't, because you can get a lot of health coming from this deck, and if your opponent isn't able to keep leeches sitting onto the board, you are obviously able to deal quite a bit into them. They end up having the Ysera as well. I do end up drawing into a Morbid Swarm, which is good for me, so I just play it down for the ants. It means that I can trade if I need to. They end up playing down their Morbid Swarm, and then it passes over to me. This turn I'm going to use the Creature of Madness to be able to look for a Dark Gift for a card, and there's a few different options that I could go for in that situation, but I chose the 3 mana because it also will allow me to draw extra cards from undeads that have died, and it means that I'll be able to apply more pressure onto them as well. They end up doing a full trade, which is a little bit unfortunate for me because I was hoping that they wouldn't end up trading fully like that, but it ends up being perfectly fine. So I used the Righteous Gift, and I grabbed the Deathbringer Solar Fang, because in general that's going to be quite a strong card since I am obviously able to apply quite a lot of pressure using my hero power that I have. I end up using the Leech just to be able to steal health from the 1/1. It's possible that it was a little bit of a mistake by just leaving the 1/1 alive, but it doesn't really matter too much. They end up just taking out my minion. I play down the next creature down as well, and once again, there's a few different options that I could go for it with it. I end up choosing the Mug, and I believe in this game I do make a misplay because I was thinking it was similar to the I haven't played the Menagerie cards before. Like, I was thinking about Battlegrounds for some reason, but it wasn't too close to that. So they currently are applying quite a lot of pressure towards me. I do have the 5 mana minion as well. I don't really want them to be able to have the leeches down onto the board as well, so I just use my my 5 mana minion to trade into their leeches. And keep in mind, when this card dies, I will be able to just use my health total to be able to get it back onto the board. They end up playing down their Rainbow Seamstress, so they are going to be able to trade into me, and then they can steal the health using their leeches, so they're able to fully take it out. I end up using the Corpse Explosion here just to be able to clear their board. I don't really want to have the leeches stealing any more health from my health total, and I don't really want to use the husks to be able to be into a problematic situation with that. I do draw into an Airlock Breach as well, but it's not going to be any use just yet. And then I use the leeches to be able to steal health from one of the Airlock Breaches minions. They use their Headless Horseman to be able to take out my 4/6, and then they're going to use their minion to be able to trade into my husk. So that means that I am back into a situation where I do need to get the leeches to be able to apply some pressure towards them. And just since they use the Headless Horseman as well, I do play down my 8 hands as well, just because it means that they won't be able to get the buff going into their minions. So they won't be able to get the head to be able to get any extra value coming from it. They use an Infested Breath onto my 4/4, and then they're able to take it out. Oh, they'll leave it on 1 health, but then it will be getting close on being taken out. At the moment, I am just thinking about how I'm going to use the Ursoc for it. So I play down the Ursoc here, and I'm hoping to be able to get quite a lot of their minions using it. So I hit the Ursoc, it hits into a few of their guys, it hits into a few of their leeches, and it hits into my 4/4. It does end up applying some pressure towards them. And then I can use those leeches to be able to steal some health from my opponent as well. They use their Ceaseless Expanse, so they are able to clear my board. I do end up being able to have 2 of the 5 health minions now to be able to apply more pressure towards them. I play down the leeches to be able to draw a few more cards. Obviously it allows me to set up a little bit more. And I play down the husks and also the taunt minions to be able to just apply a little bit more pressure to them. Obviously it allows me to heal up some more health using the husks and the leeches. So it does get me into a relatively strong board position. They use their Corpse Explosion to be able to clear my board. It's not too much of a big situation for me because I have been able to keep their health total at a relatively reasonable amount, but I'm also able to generate the 5 mana minion quite often as well. I play down the Ysera here. It gets me an extra 3 mana, but it's also quite useful because I'm able to use the Ysera to get the Corrupted Dream cards as well. And then I just end up dealing the face damage to them. I don't really want to be drawing any extra cards just at the moment because I still haven't got my Headless Horseman onto the board just yet, and I don't really want to be going into a fatigue. I end up drawing to my Headless Horseman now, so that was the card that I was waiting for in particular. Obviously it allows me to apply pressure towards them, and I'll be able to use it to deal with a lot of their minions that are coming out. I can get extra value coming from it too. I use the Airlock Breach here as well, just to be able to get a little bit more of a board established, but also apply more pressure to them. And you'll notice that I still do have my Ceaseless Expanse here as well, so I'll be able to deal with quite a lot of their minions that they have. They use their Corpse Explosion, so it will be able to take out everything except the Ysera. And then they use their Pumpkin to be able to take out the Ysera. It leaves them just with a 5 mana minion on board, so I'm not really too concerned about that just at the moment. I do draw, and it gets me into an Airlock Breach. I just play down the Ziliax to be able to get my Sandrill out. And then I trade into the 5/4 using my Ziliax just to be able to clear it. And then I play down my other 5 health minions down onto the board. It gets to apply pressure. I could have potentially used the Jug that turn as well to be able to get these minions buffed up. They use their Ursoc to be able to clear my board. It does get them it will get them access back to one of the 4/6s, which is a little bit of a situation for me. So then they'll be able to get some more value coming from it as well. I draw in to kill Jaden, but I still need one more turn now to be able to apply the pressure using the... I made a little misplay there. I still need to apply the pressure using the dream cards. That was a misplay using the 5 mana minion before using the Ceaseless Expanse. I think I may have misclicked, I'm not really sure what happened. I play down the 4/6s in the Airlock Breach, and then I use my hero power to go face. So since I know that they've used their Ceaseless Expanse and their Ursoc and their Corpse Explosions, this board should be strong enough to be able to deal with a lot of the stuff that they potentially could have. I play down the 2 mana 6/10, it allows me to have Elusive on my hero. They use their Ysera to be able to get some extra mana up. And then they use their Airlock Breach to be able to summon more of the 5/5 minions. And then they play down their own board to be able to go wide. But since I have the Ysera Dreams, the Corrupted Ysera card, I can use that to be able to clear most of the taunts that they have. So I use that to clear it. And then I do have enough damage sitting on board that I'll be able to lethal them down anyway. I could have used the Dream card to shuffle into their deck if I wanted to. But I do obviously have enough damage that's sitting on board to be able to take them out. And then they obviously end up finishing up there. So like, if you apply pressure towards your opponent and you get the board control down, and then you run them out of their AoEs, you are going to be in a relatively strong position. Going against Warlock, I am, once again, you're looking to keep the cards that are, like the leeches are quite strong, but you are trying to also get the Dark Gift minions out of your deck as well, and also get the ants, because you do need to apply pressure towards them since they will start to overwhelm you using their giants. They end up playing down a Credit Caretaker, so this is a bit of a different Warlock deck that I did not expect to be playing against. They're using that to be able to heal up their health total. It does show to me that they're more than likely going to be using a big Warlock deck rather than like a location one. They use the Tranquil Treant, which allows them to gain an empty mana crystal, which I'm perfectly fine with. Like, they are using their mana to be able to summon these sorts of minions. I end up choosing here the Crimson Commander just to be able to get a little bit more of a buff onto my dudes. I could have chosen the Starship piece if I wanted to as well, like it wouldn't have been a terrible idea. They play down their Trickster and they trade into my 1/2, so I'm still just holding off because I want them to be the one that trades into me so I get the Mana Crystal access a turn earlier than they do. Because if they get the Mana Crystal going into their turn, it means that they're at a bigger advantage than if I get the Mana Crystal going into my turn, since it's an empty Mana Crystal. They use Fractured Power here, so it's a little bit of a problem situation for them, since I do still have the Wind Fury, so I can apply more pressure going into them as well. I use the Dark Creature to be able to get the extra minion in as well. And then I play down my 3 mana 5/6 now, since it got the extra 2/2 buff. And then I just go face into them, so I'm just applying that pressure towards them, so then they have to trade into my minions, otherwise they'll be in a bit of trouble. They use their dominoes to be able to clear the majority of my board. I could have potentially used the husk that turn, but I didn't really want to, just because of the fact that with the husks, if they did end up creating a relatively strong board, because they will be getting the 2 extra mana this turn, I would be in a little bit of a problem, since they were going to go up to 8 mana. Obviously, since I have the charge minion, I am in a very good situation for myself. They use the Drain Soul, so it does clear my 4/3. It gives a buff to my guy as well. And I do have the charge minion, so I'm not really in too much of a problem. Like, I just end up just going face with both my minions, just applying that pressure towards them, because I can use the husks if I need to be able to take up the last bits of health of them anyway. Because once they get lower onto their health totals, even if they summon big minions, they aren't able to use the husks. Like, they aren't able to survive the husks, since it will target them rather than target their minions. They use the health drink, so it is going to be able to take out the majority of my guy, but it obviously summons the 1/1s down into the board that end up summoning themselves again. And since they took it out going into my turn, I'll be able to attack using them next turn anyway if I needed to. And I do obviously have the husks too. So going into this game, I am playing against a hunter. So a lot of the hunters that have been recently playing have been using the Zerg hunter. So it's quite an aggressive archetype. So I am looking for being able to apply a little bit of pressure or have a little bit of a board to start with, while also being able to get some leeches out to be able to survive their onslaught. I end up getting the Morbid Swarm, which I'll be able to use for the ants. The Ysera Emerald Dream obviously ends up activating, which is useful for me, and I just use the Morbid Swarm to be able to get the ants ready. With the ants, it means that even if they do summon the Zerg minions, I do obviously have a little bit of a board going into them. The Corpse Explosion should be quite strong as well. They end up summoning the 1/2 onto the board, and I just go face with all my minions except the charge minions just to leave it as a 1 damage. It potentially was incorrect doing that, just since they do have the death rattles to be able to proc, and then they can get obviously another 3/5 onto the board. They use the 3/5, which then trades into my 1/1. And I use my right just to be able to get the extra cards if I need to. And I obviously choose here the handler because it will summon an extra copy of itself as well, so I can use it to trade. I use the 2/1 to trade into the 3/4 and the 2/2 to trade into the 3/4. And then I trade my ant into their eggs, and they aren't able to use the death rattle proc again going into next turn, just in case. Because if they did, they would be applying too much pressure for me. I do obviously still have the leeches if I need to be able to clear them. They use their 3/1 and their 2/3 to go face, so I'm not really too concerned about that. I have the leeches as well, which I'll be able to use to trade into their minions if I need to. And obviously it will keep me up on a relatively high health total. I use my 1/1s to just trade into their 3/1. By doing this, it means that I'll be able to clear the 2/1 and the 3/1s. That will just leave them with 2 minions down onto the board. They use their worm to be able to draw some extra cards. And then they've got the spawning pool, so they'll obviously be able to get the Zerglings coming from it as well. And they use Wound Prey, so they'll be able to clear both of my leeches that I have sitting on the board. But since I've been able to re-establish some pressure back down, they aren't really applying too much damage to me. Like, I'm not too concerned about what they could do. And I do obviously still have the Corpse Explosion as well. I end up choosing the Fabric as well to be able to get a extra minion out of my deck, or extra card out of my deck that uses corpses. And obviously getting a second Corpse Explosion is quite useful because this deck does use the RC Hounds, which can be quite terrifying if they do get a lot of buffs going onto them. But the Corpse Explosion will be able to clear the board that they could have. They use their Hydralisk, and unfortunately for them, they don't end up hitting my minion at all, so I am able to lifesteal the health back up. And I have like 2 choices that I could do with that. I could have used the Airlock Breach, or I could have used the Corpse Explosion. I opted to keep the Corpse Explosion just because they potentially could be getting some other Death Rattle eggs down onto the board, and the Corpse Explosion is very strong going into those cards. They play down their Zerglings. Since they have Rush, they will be able to deal quite a lot of damage going into their turn as well. They use Evolution Chamber, so they'll be able to get quite a strong board as well, and then a second Evolution Chamber. So they are going to be going quite hard in this turn into me. So they'll be able to, they can deal 18 damage, which is quite a lot. So they can deal 22 damage, which is quite a lot. So I end up thinking I'm going to use the Corpse Explosion, so I can use it to clear their entire board since I have the 7 corpses available. I then opt to use my hero power just to be able to send the 1 extra damage to face, but it also allows me to get another corpse just in case I do get an Airlock Breach going into next turn. Because if I get an Airlock Breach, I could use Houndmaster, I could use hero power to be able to trade into them. They end up using Karrigan, which does end up allowing them to get another of their Zergs out. Fortunately for me, they don't have access to their hero power at the moment, so I end up using the Husks to be able to play it down, and then I use my my handler to be able to trade into the 2/5. This allows me obviously to maximize the amount of damage that's going into their minions, but also getting me the extra corpses that I need and to clear their board as best as I can. It also heals me up the most that I can as well. They do play down the Zerglings, they get an Investor as well, but Investor's a lot weaker than it used to be since it's only giving one attack even if their buff ends up occurring. They use their 2/2 to be able to trade into my Leech, and then since we're going into turn 9, I can use Ziliax to be able to clear their board, but also heal up to a reasonable health total as well. So I play down the Ziliax here. I use the Ziliax to trade into the 1/6. And then I use the Husk to trade into the 2/2, the 1/1 to trade into the other 1/1, and then I use the Ziliax to trade into the Infestor. It allows me to best get the most amount of minions from their board without losing as many of mine, and then they end up conceding to me. So I do get into a very favourable position once I am able to clear the onslaught that they had. And once they end up using both of their evolutions, they weren't able to generate too much against me. The next opponent's playing a Hunter as well, so it's once again quite likely that they're using a Zerg Hunter, so I'm going to need to be making sure that I'm mulliganing for quite safe cards. So I end up opting to get rid of all of the cards that are in my hand, since the majority are late game cards. I do need to apply a little bit of early game pressure onto the board. I end up drawing into a 2-drop and a 3-drop, which will be quite useful, so it does help fill out my curve a little bit. I don't really think I want to use the coin going into the next turn though, unless I don't have anything to do, because the creature gift generates you a 3-mana minion, so it's not that useful using the coin, because you won't be able to do anything different really in your other turn. So if they're not really applying too much pressure, and I do end up drawing another creature, so I end up opting to use the coin in this situation, but if there wasn't another 2-drop or something else for me to do, it would in general be better just keeping it in the deck. I end up choosing to keep the King Mookla. Although it's not a extremely useful card compared to the Draenei one that I could have chosen, I chose the King Mookla because I'll be able to get quite a strong board presence, and it will mean that my opponent will have a little bit of trouble clearing it if they are using a deck that relies on building giants and things, since it is obviously going to be bigger than a giant, and I can get it down next turn as well. They end up playing down their Nidus Worm, which does mean that I will be able to play down my King Mookla the next turn to be able to apply some pressure towards them, and obviously it can deal quite a bit of damage that's there as well. So I play down the King Mookla and I just go face with my 2/1/2s. So basically, it's a turn 3 giant essentially that I'll be able to use for them. And there isn't usually too many ways that they are able to clear these sorts of size minions as well. So they end up using their Glacial Shard to be able to freeze my Mookla, which is fine, I'm not really too concerned about that. And then they use their Grifter to be able to get an extra spell, so there's not really any spells at the moment that will be able to deal with it. They choose the Draw 3 spell, so it means that they'll be able to get some extra value going into the later game. Obviously, since I do have a few of my other minions that I could potentially use, I have a few of my other draw cards that I could use, it's not really too much of an issue for me. I end up playing down the Observer of Mysteries here just to be able to generate a few spells that potentially could be useful for me. And I do just trade into the 3/2 just because it means that my opponent might be thinking it's Freezing Trap or something along those lines. I end up choosing to grab the 6-mana minion just because with the lifesteal and the extra 3 health, it does mean that I'll be able to trade the extra 3 damage. I will be able to get it to trade into my enemy's minions a lot easier, and if I need extra health, it will be useful as well. They end up playing down a few Zerglings against me, so I'm not really too concerned about that at the moment. They will obviously be able to use a Hydralisk to be able to do some clearing stuff. So they play down the Hydralisk. It does clear the majority of my board using that, and it deals a little bit of face damage. Since I didn't have any Bear Trap or anything like that, it does mean that they're able to trade into my Monkey a lot easier. But with them using their minions like that, it does mean that I am able to reapply some pressure into them. So although I don't end up although I don't end up having any board at the moment, and they did take out the monkey, it does mean that I'm at a significant advantage now since I am the one in control of the board. They play down their Niall, which is fine, like it means that they'll be able to search out extra cards during their turn, but since I currently have a relatively strong board, like it'll allow me to draw an extra card and I can generate a little bit of extra health, I am at a definite advantage against them at the moment. They do, fortunately for them, get down 2 giants and they play down their alien encounter, so it does make things a little bit more difficult for me. I just play down the Husk here. It will allow me to get extra health from my opponent. And I opt to just keep the 2/2 onto the board, like it doesn't really do anything different by trading it in or not. In general, it means that I gain 1 less health doing it that way if I did trade, but they wouldn't have an extra minion onto the board. But what I'm thinking I'm going to have to do going into the next turns anyway is I'm going to have to use the Corpse Explosion to be able to take out their Seaside Giant. Because if they keep the Seaside Giants onto the board, it does mean that I will be in a little bit of a challenging situation. They play down their Scout, and it allows them to obviously get some extra value with their bird watching. Fortunately for me, though, they aren't able to use the Scout to get any more Seaside Giants. They use the Seaside Giants to be able to trade into my other minions, and then they play down their Shard to be able to clear the board that's there. I use my charge here. I use my Corpse Explosion here to be able to clear the board. It does end up getting to 7, and then I use their Handler to be able to trade into the 8-1. This allows me obviously to get the extra, just have a minion down onto the board, and it was looking a lot more promising, but when they put down the Seaside Giants, it did mean that I did have a lot of pressure going into me in those turns. They play down the next Scout, and they also play down Xavius, which is fine. Like, it does mean that they're going to get the extra buff for it, and then they use a tracking as well, so they are getting quite a lot of extra value. Obviously, I do need to start applying a little bit of pressure to them, otherwise they will be able to outlast me with the amount of value they are getting through the Scouts and the Discovers that they are drawing. They play down the Zergling, which is fine, like it's not really doing too much for them at the moment. I play down my Infestation just to be able to draw a few extra cards. Ceaseless Expanse obviously could clear the board if I wanted it to, but there's not really any point doing that at the moment since I do obviously still have the 2 leeches on the board. Obviously that gets me extra health. They end up playing down their Mixologist, which I'm not really too scared about. I do obviously, as I mentioned just before, have the Ceaseless to be able to board clear if I need to. I have Ysera if I need to get a little bit more mana as well. They end up using a Mixologist special, which fortunately for them, they did get another Scout to be able to get some more value into their hand using tracking or bird watching or whatever. But they end up using another Mixologist to be able to search for another card. I think they're hoping to be able to get that AoE to be able to clear my Leech without trying too hard. But they end up getting the 3 damage one and then the one that allows them to get an extra, health onto their board. And then they play down an Alien Encounters as well. I do have Ursoc if I need to be able to clear the board. I could also use Dream Watching if I really wanted to, but there's not much point. I could use Ceaseless, so there was a few different options that I had that could clear whatever they sent out. So I used the Ursoc to be able to clear their board, and it does obviously get me the other minions that they had. And my minion also does end up getting reborn with, resurrected with Reborn. And then they also play down their Ceaseless, so they use that to board wipe, which means that and since they didn't get that one off Scout, it means that they won't be able to use another Ceaseless this game, which means that I should be able to outlast them now. As long as I can keep all these Scouts that they keep getting down in control. They use another bird watching, so they're now down to their last few cards in their deck, and they've only got one more minion they could potentially have. And once again, since they don't have Seaside Giants, I'm not really too concerned about them using it. They play down their Nidus Worm, and it does show to me they don't have any more Zerg cards, so they do have Kerrigan in their hands still anyway. They use the last bird watching to be able to get their last minion out of their deck, But now they're down to they have no more space in their hand, but also they're down to their last card in their deck as well. So they will be overdrawing whatever it is. I end up playing down the Morbid Swarm to deal the damage into the Ceaseless Expanse. And then I play down the Exeter. Because I'm trying to clear out as much as I can of my hand that's here too. I play down the Ysera, and then I play down the 8/6. Like, that turn I potentially could have done a bit better. Like, what I wanted to do was try and get the dream cards available so I could AoE the board, and it would leave them just with the Ceaseless Expanse, and then I'd be able to clear it with the 1/1 charge minion, but I wasn't able to put that one together. Next turn though, I'll be able to. I didn't want to overdraw any of my important spells that come from it either. They use their minions to be able. They use their Hydralisk to be able to trade into me. Since I do have the 4/12, I obviously am in a relatively decent position, and I obviously do still have Kil'jaeden if I needed to as well. They have their Ceaseless Expanse. So they are going to be able to deal a decent amount of damage to me if they need to. I still do have my my Dream spells if I need to, and they can obviously be targeted to take out the entirety of the board basically that they have. I play it down, and then I use the Corrupted Awakening to be able to clear the majority of their board that they have. And then I use the Ghoul's Charge. It would be trading to the Ceaseless, and then I'd probably trade the Ysera into the 6/1. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe, and bye for now.